The story you're about to hear is entirely fictional. All names, events, and locations are creations of the imagination. Any resemblance to real people or places is purely coincidental. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story begins with a man who left his house in 1923, headed into the woods, and never came back. For decades, people forgot about him. But in 1952, a group of schoolchildren discovered something buried deep beneath the moss and roots, something that never should have existed. If you're into mysterious stories, missing persons cases, and strange objects that seem to whisper through time, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning. The morning Elliot Brown vanished was cold and gray. It was October 14th, 1923, just past the harvest season in the quiet northern town of Renfield. The leaves had turned a bruised gold, and the fields outside town lay empty and stiff with frost. People had already started boarding up windows, chopping wood, preparing for winter. Elliot, like many in town, was up before dawn. He kissed his wife on the forehead, she was still half asleep, and scribbled a note on a scrap of paper from the kitchen. Then he shouldered his rucksack, picked up his rifle, and walked out the front door in his boots and thick wool coat. That was the last time anyone ever saw him. The note, still preserved today in a local museum, read, "Gone hunting, don't wait up. If I'm not back by Monday, don't send anyone, please." At the time, it didn't raise eyebrows. Elliot often spent the weekends in the woods just outside Renfield. He loved the quiet, the solitude. Some said it helped his nerves. Others whispered he was escaping something, maybe the pressure of town life, maybe even his own mind. He was a bookkeeper by trade, but not a very social one. Always polite, always distant. People liked him but never really knew him, and that made his disappearance all the more unsettling. By Tuesday morning, when he still hadn't returned, his wife sounded the alarm. Men from the town gathered, forming search parties. They swept through the familiar pines and birch groves, called his name, fired shots into the air, hoping he might hear. They found nothing. No footprints, no shell casings, no scraps of fabric or broken branches, not even smoke from a campfire. It was as if Elliot Brown had walked into the woods and been swallowed whole. The official record listed him as missing, presumed dead. A small funeral was held 3 weeks later. A coffin filled with earth was buried. His wife wore black. His daughter, only 4 at the time, never fully understood why Daddy never came home. But even as the years passed, the town never forgot Elliot, not really. Stories began to spread. Some said he'd gone mad and ran into the hills like a wild man. Others whispered about a bear or a freak snowstorm. One old woman claimed to have seen a flicker of light in the forest on the night of his disappearance, like a flash of lightning, but with no sound. In truth, no one had a solid theory. So they moved on. The forest remained. Children were told to stay out of the deep woods. His wife eventually remarried and left Renfield. His house was sold, and Elliot's name became just that, a name spoken only in late-night conversations and ghost stories. Until 1952, but before we jump ahead to what happened nearly 3 decades later, we have to go back to that very first day, because there was someone else who saw Elliot leave town. A boy. His name was Thomas Greer. He was 9 years old at the time, walking the trail behind the butcher shop, where he often fed stray dogs crusts of bread. He remembered seeing Elliot standing perfectly still at the edge of the forest, not moving. He wasn't walking, Thomas later said. He was listening. Listening to what no one could say. Thomas said Elliot turned and looked straight at him. Not in a friendly way, but not angry either. Just focused. Like he knew something the rest of the world didn't. And then Elliot said something, strange words the boy never forgot. "If I go where I think I'm going, I don't come back the same." The boy blinked, and Elliot stepped into the trees and disappeared. Back in the present 1952, no one remembered that story. Thomas had moved away. The forest remained untouched in that particular corner, dense, overgrown, avoided. And then came the school trip. It was early June in 1952 when the students of Renfield Elementary boarded the two green school buses bound for a weekend camping trip. The destination was Pine Hollow, a stretch of forest about an hour from town, well known to locals but rarely visited anymore. In the decades since Elliot Brown's disappearance, the deeper trails had grown wild and overgrown, and though no one really talked about it anymore, the air there always felt different. The trip had been arranged by Mr. Harold Kinley, a history teacher in his mid-40s, with a loud voice and a soft spot for kids who didn't fit in. He brought along 2 parent volunteers and a small group of 13 children aged 9 to 12. Among them was a quiet, observant boy named Michael Greer. Yes, Greer as in Thomas Greer's nephew, though few people connected that detail at the time. Michael was 11, thin and sharp-eyed, the kind of kid who listened more than he spoke. He liked puzzles, maps, and stories. He also had an odd sensitivity to places he claimed to feel when a place didn't want you there. It was the kind of comment that made teachers raise eyebrows and kids whisper behind their hands. That weekend he would prove everyone right. The group set up camp near a small clearing surrounded by tall pines and a trickling stream. It was peaceful. The children laughed, played games, roasted marshmallows. Nothing unusual at first. That night Michael couldn't sleep. He lay in his sleeping bag, staring at the ceiling of canvas above him, feeling a tug. Not of fear, but of curiosity, a kind of humming beneath his ribs, pulling his thoughts beyond the safety of the tents. He got up quietly and slipped on his boots. The moon was full, casting pale silver light through the trees. Everything looked sharper, almost artificial, like the forest was made of paper cutouts. He wandered, letting his feet choose the path until he found himself in an unfamiliar part of the woods. That's when he saw it. Half buried beneath roots and moss, there was a leather valise. It looked impossibly old, the kind of case someone might have taken on a train journey 100 years ago. The brass clasps were tarnished. One of the leather straps was torn. A faint initial was pressed into the side EB. Michael's hands trembled as he knelt down. He glanced over his shoulder, nothing but silence. Then with a deep breath he opened it. Inside he found a worn leather journal, the spine-cracked pages yellowed but intact. A handgun wrapped in oilcloth. It looked unused. A black and white photograph faded and curled at the edges. A tangle of rope, one end scorched. And strangest of all, a silver pocket watch, ticking slowly, backward. Michael touched the photograph first. His breath caught in his chest. It was a picture of his group, the very one on this trip. The children, the teacher, the same tents behind them, same backpacks, same clothes, same him right there in the corner looking directly at the camera. But the photo had a date scratched into the back, taken June 14, 1952, 3 days from now. Michael stuffed everything back inside the valise and ran. Back at camp he tried to tell Mr. Kinley. He held up the photo, the journal, but the teacher gave him a skeptical look. "A prank, Michael," he said, his voice tinged with disappointment. "Who put you up to this?" "No one," Michael insisted. "It was in the woods, I swear. There's writing in the journal, someone named Elliot Brown." Kinley's face changed. He took the journal open to the first page and read the neat, slanted cursive. June 8, 1947. "I'm still here. The sun sets early now. Time folds differently in this part of the forest. I hear children at night, though I've seen no one. I believe I've circled back, not in place, but in year." He closed the journal, looked at the boy, then at the woods behind them. No one laughed after that. The rest of the night passed in silence. Mr. Kinley kept the valise inside his tent. Michael was told not to speak to the others about it, not yet. They would contact the local authorities once they returned to town. But Michael couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the photo again. Not just the photo, but a small detail he hadn't noticed at first, a figure in the background standing behind the trees. Tall, unmoving, watching. The next morning, one of the children was missing. Her name was Lisa Harrow, age 10, tent zipper undone, boots gone, no note. Panic set in. The group split up to search. Mr. Kinley radioed for help static. The backup batteries were drained, though they'd been brand new. As they searched, Michael found himself back at the place where he'd found the valise. Only now it was gone. In its place, dug into the soil, was a new object, a page from the journal torn and pinned under a rock. Written in the same handwriting. She stepped where she shouldn't. The ground does not forget. The next one will be the boy who knows. Michael backed away slowly. From the shadows he heard breathing. And for just a moment he saw a face. Pale, hollow, watching. It was Elliot Brown. But older. Much older than 65. It was barely 6 a.m. when the search for Lisa Harrow began. The group of campers was now missing one of their own, and though no one said it aloud, they all felt it. The forest was wrong. It wasn't just that Lisa had vanished, it was how everything felt stretched like sound, echoed too long, and shadows lingered too late into the morning. Mr. Kinley ordered everyone to stay together while he and the two parents, Mr. Harlan and Ms. Donnelly, formed 3 search groups. But just before splitting up, he pulled Michael aside. "Don't go off alone again," he said, voice low and urgent. "If you see anything strange, come straight to me, no questions." Michael nodded. He wanted to believe they were safe. That maybe Lisa had just wandered too far and would come out of the trees any minute now, arms full of pine cones and some silly excuse. But deep down, he already knew Lisa was gone. And it wasn't over. By 9 a.m., nothing had turned up, no Lisa, no footprints, no broken branches. The trail she'd supposedly taken led into a loop and brought them back to the clearing. Every single time. That was the first time they noticed the forest wasn't just dense, it was repeating itself. June 14th, 1952. Same day, written on the back of the mysterious photograph. Michael sat with the photo again while the others argued over what to do next. There it was, his face clear as day. Lisa, too, in the corner, slightly blurred. Mr. Kinley was mid-laugh, pointing off camera. Everyone was accounted for. Except someone stood in the background. Not Elliot, not a person exactly, but a shape, tall, dark, faceless. And now it was closer. Michael flipped open the journal again, rereading the entries. Many had dates, but not all. One was undated with smeared ink and a frantic, uneven script. "I thought I was walking north, but the sun hasn't moved. The same tree again, the same fallen log. Even the birds won't go past the ridge. There's something in here with me, something old. I heard it last night, a voice speaking my name. In my own voice." Michael slammed the book shut. He looked up just in time to see something move in the tree line. The group gathered once more in the clearing. Mr. Kinley, visibly shaken, now tried to radio for help again. Still static. Then, mid-sentence, the batteries exploded in a quiet pop. Smoke rose from the device, and for a moment everyone froze. "Okay," Kinley said, setting down the useless radio. "We leave. Right now." They packed in silence. But when they tried to return to the main trail, it wasn't there. The path they'd arrived on was gone. In its place, thorns, wild undergrowth, and trees that looked decades older than the ones from yesterday. As if time had shifted just on this side of the forest. Kinley marched ahead anyway, carving a new path with a pocket knife. But after 20 minutes of hiking, they reached the same clearing. Again, terror set in like fog. Michael sat down and whispered, "We're not walking in circles. The forest is folding." One of the other kids, Derek, age 10, cried out that he recognized a tree with a rope scar in it. The group tried a different direction. They ended up at the stream, which now flowed backwards. Fish hovered beneath the surface, unmoving. Even the current looked stuck. Ms. Donnelly, pale and shaking, whispered, "We're not alone." No one responded. Suddenly, Michael felt something brush his arm. He turned. A new page of the journal lay at his feet. He didn't see who left it, but it hadn't been there seconds ago. It read, "Third day. They think it's the trees, but the trees are trapped too. Time doesn't flow here, it collects. And when enough has gathered, it spills." Michael looked up. This wasn't just about Elliot anymore. This was about everyone who'd ever stepped too far into these woods. That night, the group decided to take shifts keeping watch. But by morning, Derek was gone too. Same story. Zipper undone. No prints. No sound. Only a new message scratched into the bark of a tree near his tent. 2 down. The boy with the book is next. Michael felt something shift inside him. He wasn't scared anymore. He was angry. He opened the journal again. In the back was a hidden flap glued between 2 pages. Inside was a map. Hand-drawn. Dated 1923, signed E.B. But unlike modern maps, it didn't show trails or landmarks. It showed time loops, dates, places where people had disappeared. Michael turned to Kinley. "We have to follow this." Kinley didn't even hesitate. He nodded and they left the clearing behind for good. The paper looked impossibly old. The ink had bled in places, but the lines were still legible, deliberate. The edges were browned and delicate, as though they'd been handled by fire or time itself. Michael stared at the title scribbled across the top in dark, looping cursive. "To Whom the Forest Opens" by E. Brown. It wasn't a topographical map. There were no contour lines or compass directions. Instead, it was marked with dates. Some were circled, others were scratched out. A handful had tiny notes next to them. Sept 1904, loop begins here. Oct 14, 1923, entry point. July 1929, heard voices. August 1942, the girl left the box. She never came back. And at the bottom corner, faint, almost erased, was June 15th, 1952, tomorrow. It was circled twice, underlined once. Michael and Kinley sat together under the dawn light studying the map as the others huddled near the fire, silent and pale. "We follow it," Kinley said. Michael nodded. They didn't tell the other kids the full truth, only that there might be an exit deeper in a way out no one else had found. The group, exhausted and terrified, followed without resistance. The air thickened as they walked. Every few yards, Michael saw something strange. A shoe embedded in a tree trunk. A toy soldier rusted and covered in moss. A girl's ribbon half buried in the dirt. Artifacts. Not from their group, but from others. Other people, other times. As they moved, the forest began to change. Trees grew denser, but not taller. The ground felt less like earth and more like memory, soft pulsing like it was alive beneath their boots. At midday, they reached the first marker on the map. A hollow tree stump blackened with age. Inside, they found a small cloth pouch. Inside the pouch was a wristwatch, frozen. A lock of hair tied with blue thread. A note that simply said, "She remembered too much." Kinley looked at Michael. "They left this for someone. Or we were always meant to find it," Michael replied. They pushed forward. As the sun dipped lower, they entered a clearing unlike any other. The light seemed to bend around its edge. Everything was silent, even the insects had stopped humming. Michael unfolded the map again. A new mark had appeared. It hadn't been there before. It pulsed faintly in ink that glimmered silver. "Stay until it speaks." They stood at the center of the clearing. The wind shifted. And then they heard it. Whispers. Low at first, then rising. Dozens of overlapping voices, some children, some adults, all speaking at once. Michael recognized a few phrases from the journal. "Don't move. It remembers where you stood. The box came first. The time came after. He's still here. He watches the ones who read." Suddenly the ground shuddered. A seam opened in the grass like a trapdoor made of soil and roots. Inside another valise, but this one was newer. Not Elliot's. It was pale leather, almost white. The clasp was unmarked. When Michael opened it, he gasped. Inside were a Polaroid photo, too modern for 1952. It showed a group of people, but they were blurry, and in the center, clear as crystal, was Michael. Same face, same clothes, but older, a teenager now, maybe 16. Standing next to him was Mr. Kinley, but aged 30 years. Neither was smiling. A folded page from a journal. "I told myself I wouldn't come back, but something always brings us back. If you found this, you're already part of it." And at the bottom, a cassette tape. Michael had never seen one before, not in 1952. "Do you know what that is?" he asked Kinley. Kinley turned pale. It wasn't invented yet. That night back at the fire, Kinley turned the photo in his hands. "How can this exist?" he whispered. "It's not just time," Michael said. "It's memory and intention. The forest. It's showing us what we're becoming." The other kids were too afraid to speak. Even the trees seemed to lean in, listening. And then, like clockwork, another child vanished. This time it was Joseph, age 11. No signs, no sound. Only a new photo appeared on Michael's sleeping bag. Joseph standing in the clearing, holding the white valise. Michael turned to Kinley. "They're not just disappearing," he said. "They're being collected." Kinley's voice cracked. Collected by what? Michael looked down at the journal in his hands, the map, then toward the darkness in the woods, and said, "By whatever wrote this before I did." The forest was no longer the same. It wasn't just the thick trees or the strange silence that followed them. It was the light itself. The deeper they moved, the more off it became. The sun hovered unnaturally above the trees, fixed like a broken clock hand. Shadows fell in the wrong directions, and the temperature, always cold in the morning, was now warm and sticky, as if they had stepped into a different season altogether. Michael held the map like a compass, but even the map was changing. He would blink and new lines would appear, new words. Sometimes they vanished just as fast. At one point, he swore he saw his own handwriting appear across the bottom corner. Don't let Kinley look behind him. He didn't show it to Kinley. They walked in silence. There were 6 of them now. Michael, Mr. Kinley, Amy Langston, age 12, Jonah Alvarez, 10, Miss Donnelly, the chaperone, and Rachel Myers, the smallest, just 9 too young to fully grasp what was happening. The rest were gone. Each child had seen or heard something that didn't make sense, something personal. Amy had heard her mother calling her name, even though her mother had died the previous year. Jonah swore he saw a version of himself, older, bloodied, running between the trees. Rachel just cried, saying she wanted to go home but didn't know where home was anymore. At noon they reached it. Or it reached them, the center. It was not marked by a clearing or monument. There were no signs or ancient stones or ruins. It was instead a shift. The ground beneath their feet changed texture. Moss turned to soft ash. The trees grew taller, impossibly tall, and leaned inward like hands folding in prayer. And in the very center was a structure, wooden, decayed, almost a cabin, but not quite, more like a skeleton of one. Mr. Kinley stepped forward, first flashlight raised. But there was no door, only a narrow hallway that seemed to stretch too far for the size of the building. Inside the walls, faint whispering. Michael followed. Each step felt like walking through thick syrup. His ears popped. The map in his hand curled inward, as if it too was trying to hide from what was coming. On the far wall, someone had carved dozens of names. He recognized 2, Elliot Brown, Lisa Harrow. Below them, new scratches. Derek Fisher, Joseph Lang, and then Michael Greer. It was already carved in. Kinley touched the wall gently, then froze. What Michael asked. "There's another room," Kinley whispered. But it wasn't there before. They stepped through the warped doorway. The second room was wrong. The dimensions were distorted. Corners stretched upward, ceiling bent inward like a collapsing lung. At the center stood a pedestal, and on it a third valise. Michael walked up, but the moment his fingers touched the latch, everything changed. Flash! He was alone. Everyone was gone. The room was gone. He stood in a snow-covered field, the cabin gone, the woods distant. Snow fell, but made no sound. And in front of him a man, old, hunched, but unmistakably Elliot Brown, only not. His skin shimmered faintly like water reflecting over stone. His eyes glowed faintly gray. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Instead, a voice echoed inside Michael's head. "I thought I could map it, that I could reason it. But the forest doesn't run on time. It runs on recognition. It finds the ones who remember, the ones who won't let go." Michael trembled. "Why me?" he asked. Elliot looked sad. "Because you carried the story, and stories always come back home." Suddenly, Michael was back in the cabin, everyone staring at him. "You disappeared," Rachel said softly. "It was only a few seconds," Kinley added. "But you were gone." Michael opened the third valise. Inside, a reel of film marked Michael, Archive 1, a child's drawing a cabin surrounded by faces with no eyes. a page torn from the journal, different handwriting this time. The first boy became the next writer, the last boy became the witness, and the one who sees them both will inherit the cycle. Suddenly outside the trees screamed. Not a sound made by humans or animals, but wood-twisting tearing crying out, a deep, soul-shaking groan of the forest itself grieving, and the cabin collapsed inward like a dying lung. They ran. Through the trees, through the ash, through time itself. The map now burning in Michael's hand showed only one word left. Run! They didn't stop. Behind them, they could hear footsteps, not just one set, but dozens, maybe hundreds. Elliot, Lisa, Joseph, Derek, others whose names they'd never heard. The forest wasn't chasing them. It was returning what it had kept. They didn't stop running, even as roots rose like claws from the ground, even as branches snapped above them like whip cracks, even as the wind no longer blew in any direction. They recognized but through them, like breath from something huge and ancient. Michael led the way, map now crumpled and scorched in his hand. The only word still visible was the one that had replaced all others, run. Behind them, something was following. Not fast, not loud, but constant. They reached a break in the trees, a narrow slope that curved sharply downward and stumbled into a ravine none of them remembered passing before. They tumbled, slid, and rolled until they landed on a flat bank beside a stream. Except the stream was gone. Only the impression of it remained like a memory pressed into the dirt. Kinley looked around and whispered, "How is this possible? The river was here." Michael knelt and touched the dry groove where water once ran. "It still is," he said. "Just not right now." Amy collapsed beside a rock and pulled her knees to her chest. "We're not getting out, are we?" "No," Michael said quietly. "Not if we keep thinking like this is a place. It's not a place. It's a reflection of everything it's taken." Jonah, pale and quiet, looked up suddenly. "Then why is it giving stuff back?" Everyone turned. He pointed at something lying just a few feet ahead, half buried in leaves. It was Derek's hoodie, fresh, still warm, and next to it, Lisa's necklace, Joseph's shoe, like breadcrumbs. Mr. Kinley crouched and picked up the hoodie. "Are they alive?" he asked aloud. "Is that what this is? It's leading us to them." Michael didn't answer. His fingers were trembling again, not from fear, but recognition. Because beneath the necklace, beneath the shoe, beneath the scattered items, was the fourth valise. It was different. This one was made of metal, smooth, no locks, no seams. It looked like a time capsule or a sealed container from the future impossible in 1952. Michael touched it. The surface was warm. It opened soundlessly at his touch. Inside, a photograph, black and white, slightly burned. It showed the entire group standing in the exact clearing they had just fled. Only Michael wasn't in the photo. But behind them, in the tree line, was Michael watching. A strip of film undeveloped. On the edge, someone had etched with a knife. Loop 4, Michael observation phase begins. And a single sentence typed on yellowing paper. "Every story requires a reader. You were never the author." Michael fell back, heart racing. Rachel tugged at his sleeve, voice tiny. "That wasn't us." "Was it?" "No," Michael whispered. "It's another version." Jonah stepped forward and pointed at the last object in the valise. A notebook. But not Elliot's. This one had a name pressed into the leather cover. Michael Greer, and inside blank pages, except for the very first line. Begin where the last one ends. Suddenly a scream. "Amy!" She stood frozen, pointing at the edge of the ravine. Dozens of figures were now visible among the trees. Not quite human. Not quite ghosts. They flickered like film frames, some in black and white, others in full color. Children, adults, all from different eras. Some wore turn-of-the-century clothing. One man wore a soldier's uniform, a woman in 1940s nurse garb, a girl in modern jeans, a boy with an iPod. Each one had empty eyes. Each one looked hollow. And each one was looking at Michael. Kinley backed up slowly. "What are they?" Michael gripped the notebook. "They're not people," he said. "They're stories, versions. Every person who came in here and tried to understand this place left behind a version of themselves." Jonah's voice shook, like shadows. Michael nodded, like shadows that forgot they were ever real. Then one of them stepped forward. It was Elliot Brown. But unlike the vision Michael saw before, this one was wrong. Too tall, skin flickering like static, eyes black sockets. He opened his mouth and a voice echoed from every direction. He picked up the pen. He opened the box. He carried the names. Now, he becomes one. Kinley grabbed Michael's arm. Run. They ran again up the ravine, through brush, over rocks. But the forest was shifting around them now. The ground pulsed. Trees moved without wind. Time hiccuped. Rachel blinked and for a full second wasn't there. When she reappeared, her shirt was ripped and her nose was bleeding. I saw something, she gasped. I saw my birthday. My mom gave me a bike. I was 6. It wasn't supposed to be real. Michael shook her. What else did you see? Rachel looked terrified. You. Sitting by a desk, writing. While all of us were trapped. They emerged from the trees into a clearing, one they hadn't seen before. In the center was a circle of suitcases, 12 of them. Each with a name tag. Amy Rachel Jonah, Michael Lisa, Derek, Joseph Elliott, Thomas Greer, Mr. Kinley, 2 blank tags. The moment they stepped in, the suitcases clicked open. Inside each, an item from the past, from their lives, from memories no one else could have known. Rachel's teddy bear, Jonah's asthma inhaler, Amy's math test, Michael's old bedtime book. And inside Michael's suitcase, a single photo of him, alone, in the woods, holding a notebook, looking at the camera. Behind him, everyone else frozen. They didn't speak for a long time. The circle of suitcases stood open like gaping mouths, and the forest around them had gone still, too still. Even the trees had stopped moving. The world held its breath. Michael sat in the grass staring at the photo in his hands. It was him. Not just similar, not a look-alike or future version. It was exactly him right now, with the same notebook, same shoes, same face. Only in the photo, he was alone. Everyone else, the kids. Kinley, the adults, stood behind him, frozen like mannequins. Their eyes were blank, mouths open. And Michael, he was smiling. Mr. Kinley stepped forward. Michael, he said carefully, you've seen things before anyone else. The photo, the suitcase, the journal, the map. You always knew where to go. Michael didn't answer. Jonah muttered. Why does the forest keep showing him things? It's like it's using him. Not using, Rachel whispered, following. Amy turned. What? Rachel's eyes brimmed with tears. I saw it again, when I blinked. That time I disappeared for a second, I saw him, sitting at a desk. A big desk under a light, writing in the journal. And when he finished a sentence, it happened. Everyone turned to Michael. Tell us the truth, Kinley said softly. Who are you? Michael looked down at the notebook. The one with his name on it. The one that had been blank until now. He flipped it open. Pages had begun to fill, in handwriting that was not his, or maybe was. He read aloud. Michael sat in the center of the memory circle, the others watching him like witnesses. He didn't remember how it started, only that it had always ended this way. He looked up. It's writing itself. Amy took a step back. This is insane. No, Michael said quietly. It's real. I think I've been here before. Kinley blinked. What do you mean? Michael's hand shook as he turned the page. Another entry appeared as if written by invisible hands. He forgot the first time. He forgot the second. But by the third, the forest stopped erasing. It began preserving. And he became the one who holds the pen. Michael looked up, voice shaking. This isn't the first loop, Jonah whispered. You mean we've been here before? Michael nodded. Yes, maybe dozens of times, maybe more. I think every time someone disappears, the loop resets. But every reset preserves someone who remembers just a little more each time. Amy. So who remembers now? Michael slowly raised his hand, and suddenly it clicked. Flash. His memory cracked open. A rush of visions, flashes, images out of time. Him at age 16 returning to the woods with a film crew. A page in the journal I told them I was documenting history. I didn't tell them it was mine. An old valise burning in the middle of the circle, its contents turning to ash, but his name surviving. The shadow of Elliot whispering, "We don't write to escape. We write because we were never let out." Michael doubled over. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I'm not the author," he whispered. "I'm the retainer. I don't write this story, I just remember it. The forest writes through me." Kinley asked carefully. "Then what are we supposed to do?" Michael turned the page. A new line had appeared. "The forest does not want escape, it wants audience, and the ones who refuse to forget must become part of the telling." Suddenly the ground trembled. The suitcases snapped shut. A voice echoed not from the trees, not from around them, but from within. He remembers enough now. The cycle is ready to resume. The notebook turned hot in Michael's hand. The ink glowed faint silver. And then one of the suitcases burst open again. Inside another photo. This time it was from 1923. Michael stood beside Elliot Brown. Both were smiling. Both were holding notebooks. Rachel screamed. "That's you. You were here 100 years ago." "I think I've always been here," Michael whispered. "Just in different shapes, different faces." Kinley clutched his chest. "This can't be. You're 11 years old." Michael shook his head. "Not anymore." And then slowly, as if the forest pulled a curtain open in their minds, they all saw it. The notebooks, the journals, the suitcases, the loops. It wasn't about people. It was about narrative. The need to remember, the need to repeat. And Michael was its voice. Michael stood in the center of the memory circle notebook, glowing faintly in his hands. The others stared at him, not quite trusting, not quite afraid, but on the edge of both. The ground pulsed beneath them like a living heartbeat. Each suitcase was now humming, vibrating gently, whispering soft voices. Jonah leaned toward his, then pulled back with a choked gasp. "It said my name," he whispered. "My full name, my birthday." Amy crouched beside hers and flipped the tag over. On the back was a date, July 19th, 1976. "That's not my birthday," she said. Michael looked at her. "It's the date you disappear," Rachel whimpered. "What does that mean?" Michael flipped his notebook open. Pages that were once blank now filled faster than he could read. Words appeared in looping ink, scrolling across like thoughts being formed in real time. She asks what it means. He tells her the truth this time. Michael inhaled, and then finally he said it. "We're not just in the story. We are the story. Living chapters repeating until one of us figures out how to write the ending." Kinley dropped to his knees. "Then write it. Finish it." Michael shook his head. "I don't know how." Rachel tugged his sleeve. "Then what happens if you don't?" Michael turned the page. It was already written. Those who are not written become forgotten. Those who are remembered remain, and the ones who remember must carry the forest forward. Suddenly the air shifted. A wind rose not from the east or west, but from beneath them. Trees bent in unison, groaning as though time itself leaned on their backs. The forest dimmed, like someone turned the world's light down a notch. Then the shadows returned. Not just the versions they'd seen before, those faceless, flickering echoes, but now full shapes. Elliot Brown, Lisa Harrow, Derek, Joseph, dozens more, all circling, all silent. Jonah backed away. "They're here to take us." "No," Michael said. "They're here to finish the story." The ghosts moved like clock hands circling inward, surrounding the living. And then one by one they began to merge, not violently, but like ink soaking into paper. Elliot walked forward and stepped into Michael. No sound, no flash, just a ripple. And Michael fell to his knees, eyes wide. Visions flooded in full timelines, full loops. He saw Elliot's first walk into the woods, saw the valise being buried, saw the first notebook open, saw himself Michael from every life he'd lived before. He had been the brother of someone who disappeared in 1903, a student on a dare in 1944, a documentarian in 1987, a missing child in 2002, and now Michael Greer, the 11-year-old camper who remembered enough to break the loop. Michael stood. He didn't look like a child anymore. Still 11 on the outside, but something in his eyes had changed. They were deeper, heavy. He walked slowly to the final suitcase, the one with no name tag. And when he opened it, there was nothing inside. Just a mirror, and carved into the wood beneath it, for the one who chooses the ending. Michael looked up at Kinley. "You said to finish it." "I did." Michael nodded. "Then we need to choose." "Choose what?" Amy asked. Michael pointed at the mirror. "Which ending gets remembered?" Suddenly the forest stilled again, and 3 paths opened, literal corridors through the trees, perfectly clear. Each one glowed a different color. Path 1, gold light, soft wind, bird song in the distance. Path 2, blue light, cold muffled sound, almost underwater. Path 3, no light at all, pure darkness, silence. Michael read the notebook again. It now had a title, "The Forest That Feeds on Story." And 3 options. The witnesses leave, but they never remember. The story ends, but the forest sleeps waiting for another. The author stays, and all others are freed. But the cycle continues. Michael swallowed. "I have to stay." "No," Kinley said. "You're just a kid." Michael looked at him gently. "Not anymore." Jonah began to cry. "But you saved us." Michael smiled. "Because I remembered. Someone has to carry the story. Or else, it just eats more people." Rachel hugged him hard. "I don't want to forget you." "You won't," Michael said. And then, "But you won't remember me. Just the feeling that someone stayed behind." The others chose path 1, golden light, gentle breeze, home. Michael turned to path 3, darkness, no sound, just him and the forest. He took 1 step, then another. The notebook began to close itself, and the last sentence appeared. Michael Greer walked into the dark, and the forest sighed, because the story had a name again. October 12, 1991, 4:17 p.m. Her name was Clara Whitmore. She was 9 years old, wore oversized glasses, and always rode her purple bicycle a little too far into the woods behind her grandparents' house. They warned her not to, told her stories of people going missing, strange lights, and even a boy with a notebook who never came home. But Clara was curious, and on that particular autumn afternoon, the forest looked safe. Golden light streamed through the thinning leaves. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine needles and rain-damp soil. And as she coasted down the path near the brook, her back tire struck something solid beneath the moss. She skidded, tumbled, swore under her breath like her brother did. And when she looked down, she saw a corner of old tarnished metal poking through the dirt. It was a valise, half buried, heavy. The leather was green-black with age, and the brass clasp had rusted shut. Someone had carved a name faintly into its side, but the moss obscured most of it. She cleared it carefully. Letters appeared. "MCG." Clara looked around. No one. She hesitated, then opened the latch. It gave way with a soft click. Inside, she found a folded notebook page, yellowed but intact, a faded photo of a boy standing among towering trees, and at the very bottom, a strange device, a small cassette tape with no label. She unfolded the paper. In neat, looping handwriting, it said, "To the one who hears me, if you're reading this, it means the forest has chosen again. Be careful what you remember. The more you know, the closer you get to becoming part of it. MG." Clara blinked. "What?" Then she turned the paper over and froze. There in rushed, desperate handwriting, "Don't listen to the tape alone." That night, Clara hid the valise under her bed. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she dreamed of the photo, the boy in the forest. In the dream, he blinked, moved, looked at her, and smiled. October 13th, 1991, 6:22 a.m. The next morning, Clara brought the tape to her grandfather's garage. He was the kind of man who kept old tech radios, VHS recorders, and even a cassette player. She waited until he went inside for coffee, then pressed play. The tape crackled, hissed. Then a voice, a boy's voice. Not frightened, not angry. Just calm. "If you're hearing this, you're the next one. I don't know your name yet. Maybe I never will, but I know you found it. The suitcase. The note. This means the forest picked you. Or maybe you picked the forest. My name is Michael Greer. I was 11 when I stayed behind, but I've been older than that now, for a very long time. The voice grew softer. I don't remember how many loops there've been. I only remember the stories. They come to me, through the suitcases, through the notebooks. The forest feeds on memory, on repetition, but maybe you can break the shape, or maybe you'll just write it again. And then, a sound. Something like wind. But Clara swore it sounded like whispering. She hit stop. Then she ran upstairs. October 14th, 1991, 11:48 p.m. She couldn't stop thinking about the boy's voice, so she played the tape again. This time the voice continued past where it stopped before. I left breadcrumbs, clues, in every cycle. I thought if I remembered enough I could undo it. But the forest, it always adapts. I buried this valise in 1955, but it took 36 years before someone found it. If you did, you're either meant to end it, or you're the next one to carry it forward. Then silence. Then just as Clara was about to hit stop, "Clara?" She froze. "I see you," Clara screamed. She threw the tape player across the room. It shattered. But the voice kept going. Just for a second. "Don't run," it knows now. Then silence. Real silence. Clara's parents told her it was a nightmare. Her grandfather blamed the creepy junk. But Clara didn't sleep for days. She started seeing shapes in the forest. At school, she began writing in class not her homework, but words she didn't remember choosing. One day, her teacher held up a crumpled page she'd scribbled on. At the top, in bold letters, "Begin where the last one ends." Clara never rode her bike into the woods again. But sometimes at night she heard it, a soft whisper just beyond her window, calling her name. October 20th, 1991, 3:17 a.m. The woods were still outside Clara's window, but she wasn't. She stood in the middle of her bedroom floor, eyes wide open, clutching the notebook she swore she didn't own yesterday. It was small, soft leather, with gold-etched initials, CW, inside blank pages. Except one, the first. "Begin where the last one ends." She dropped it. The cassette player, which had been smashed 4 days earlier, sat in pieces on the shelf. Or rather, it should have. Now it was whole again, reassembled, tape inserted, spinning, playing. The voice returned. "Michaels, if the forest knows your name, it has already started writing you in. You can't ignore it, you can't forget it, but you can learn to shape it." The voice paused. "Then, Clara, the suitcase you found wasn't the first. It was the last. I buried it after everything, after I stayed." Clara backed toward the wall. "No," she whispered. "I didn't ask for this." The tape answered. "None of us did, but one of us always answers. October 21st, school." Clara didn't go. She told her mother she was sick, but really she was staring at the drawing she made without realizing a page filled with loops and swirls and a house with no windows, surrounded by trees drawn with fingers instead of branches. Her mother didn't see it. Couldn't. It had already started. October 23rd, 12:07 a.m. Clara woke to the sound of a valise opening. She sat up slowly. There in the center of her room was a suitcase that hadn't been there yesterday. Old, black, still wet from rain. Inside, a picture of her family, all standing still. But Clara was missing. A film reel labeled Clara Whitmore, version 2, and a typewritten note. "You've already been here once. This is not your first walk. Ask them about the girl in 1975. Ask them if she ever came back." Clara's hands shook, because she'd never heard of any missing girl from 1975. Until now. The next morning she asked her grandmother, "Did someone go missing around here, a girl?" Her grandmother's spoon stopped midair. "Where'd you hear that?" Clara just stared. The old woman sighed. "There was a girl. Her name was Louisa Pine, lived near the creek. One day she went riding her bike into the woods. A pause. Never came back." "Was she 9?" Clara asked. Her grandmother stared. "Yes, just like you." That night Clara couldn't sleep, and at exactly 2:14 a.m. her bedroom wall started to shift, not with a sound, with a pulse. Like the wall was breathing, and then it cracked open. Behind it trees, endless trees, a forest that shouldn't have fit behind her house, but it was there, waiting, calling. And on the floor, Another valise, smaller, child-sized, labeled. Louisa returned. Inside a mirror. And in that mirror, Clara saw herself. Older, taller, eyes blank, lips curled in a strange, soft smile. She screamed, and the forest whispered back, "You've been here before, Clara, and this time you won't forget." October 26th, 1991, 5:41 p.m. Clara didn't ask permission. She just left, took her backpack, stuffed in the notebook, the cassette now silent, and the new valise marked Louisa, returned. The woods behind her grandparents' house weren't large, but today they were endless. Every step she took felt heavier, like time didn't move forward in this part of the world it circled waiting. She followed the path behind the creek, the one adults never spoke about. Half an hour in, she saw it. The ash tree, gnarled, black-veined, taller than any other tree around it, like something wrong had helped it grow. At the base, a small wooden marker, weather-worn. A name had once been carved into it. Only a few letters remained. Else. Clara fell to her knees. She could feel something beneath the soil. Not roots, not rocks. Something placed there. She dug with her hands. The earth was soft, and 10 minutes later her fingers struck metal. A second valise, smaller than Louisa's, cold to the touch, no lock. She opened it. Inside, a journal, a small plastic toy soldier, a ribbon, and a torn photograph. The photo showed 3 children standing in front of the same ash tree. 2 were girls, one clearly Louisa. The third was Michael Greer. Clara gasped. The back of the photo was labeled Loop 9, Whitmore, Pine, Greer, partial merge, failed closure. She opened the journal. It wasn't written in Michael's hand, or at least not how he'd written before. It looked older, like he was trying not to remember as he wrote. The first page read, "This isn't my forest anymore, it's hers." The rest of the pages torn out, except the last one. There, written shakily, "If Clara finds this, tell her she's not alone. The loop didn't hold. It fractured. And someone else is writing now." Clara froze. Someone else. She looked at the toy soldier, then the ribbon, and beneath them, a cassette, unlabeled. She inserted it into her pocket player and pressed play. But instead of Michael's voice, it was a girl. "Clara, I'm still here. I never left. You know me. You've been me." Then silence. Then a sound like something breathing through leaves. The forest around her changed. Colors dimmed. Shadows stretched. And the ash tree moved. Not swaying, leaning. Toward her. From beneath its roots, something black and thin slipped forward. A third valise. Wider, heavy, marked with a name Clara didn't expect. Whitmore C. Entry file in progress. Clara backed away. "No, I'm not ready." But the valise clicked open on its own. Inside, a mirror, a blank notebook, a single photograph of her taken just minutes earlier standing beside the ash tree, and at the bottom, a page torn from her own journal. It read, "You came back anyway." And then appearing in real-time ink, bleeding through from nowhere, "Someone must stay. This time it may be you." Clara screamed, but there was no one to hear, except the forest. And it whispered, "She stayed, he stayed, and you will remember them both." October 27, 1991, 4:03 p.m. The valise Clara found beneath the ash tree marked Entry File in Progress was still open. Its notebook's pages remained blank, but the mirror inside shimmered. It didn't reflect her room. It reflected forest just beyond the tree line, but not the forest outside her house. This was another place, a place she'd never seen, but remembered. Clara closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was already there. No footsteps, no transition, just inside. The sky above the clearing was gray-violet like bruised glass. The trees stood silent. The ground was flat, unnaturally so. Not dirt, not moss. Paper. Thousands of pages stitched together. Notes, scribbles, names. Most faded. But some still moved like breathing. At the center of the clearing stood a massive stone arch cracked in the center. And beside it a bench, where someone sat. A boy. Or Something shaped like a boy. Michael Greer, older than 11, younger than time. His face was blurred like it had been photocopied too many times. His voice was low-strained. You came. Clara stepped forward. You're still here. Michael nodded. I never left. Not all of me. This place, it's what's left of the storytellers who stayed too long. She knelt beside him. You sent me the tapes, the notebook. No, he said. I tried. But the forest, it chooses who gets heard. He tapped his head. The part of me you heard isn't the part sitting here. It's the part that still believes there's a way out. Clara swallowed. Is there? Michael looked around. At the field of unfinished sentences. Not if you stay. He stood slowly. Every loop creates more versions. Not just of us, but of moments. Choices. There are hundreds of me here. Thousands of her. Louisa, Amy, Kinley. All echoes. Why? Because the forest doesn't want the story to end. So it just duplicates it. Folds it back in. He turned to her sharply. That notebook you brought, it's still blank, right? Clara nodded. Michael's blurred eyes narrowed. Then you haven't chosen yet, and that means you still can. Suddenly the ground trembled, and a second figure emerged from behind the stone arch. Louisa Pine, or something close. Her dress was torn. Her eyes were too wide. Her hair floated like she was underwater. She smiled. You're here, she whispered. Finally, we can start again. Clara froze. Michael grabbed her arm. She's not Louisa, not anymore. What is she? A loop that survived. Louisa tilted her head. You left me behind, all of you, again and again. Michael stepped between them. We tried to save you. Louisa's voice cracked like glass. You wrote me out. She lunged. But Clara stepped back onto a page in the ground marked Chapter 1, The Boy Who Stayed. And everything froze. The arch began to glow faint gold, and a voice echoed through the paper sky. All stories must end, but not all endings must repeat. Clara stared down at the page. It was hers. The ink was appearing now, letter by letter. She read aloud. Clara remembered everything, and that was how she escaped. Suddenly the air cracked. The arch split further, revealing a new path, one made of nothing but memories Clara had never lived. Yet somehow, they were hers. Michael turned to her. Take it. Clara shook her head. What about you? He smiled, face still flickering. I'm just a story now. She reached for him, but her hand passed through. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be, he said. You remembered, that's enough. She stepped into the arch. Light swallowed her. The notebook in her hand closed itself, and behind her the clearing folded paper, crumpling ink running like blood. Louisa's scream echoed once, then was gone. October 28, 1991, 6:39 a.m. Clara awoke in her bed. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. Birds chirped. It looked like home, smelled like home, felt like home, but she knew it wasn't. Because on the desk by the window was a notebook. And it didn't have her name. It said, Jonah Kinley, version 2.3.2. Clara slowly got out of bed. Everything in the room was nearly right. Her trophies were there. Her drawings. Her blanket. But the calendar on the wall said, October 12th, 1991. She blinked. That's not possible. She checked her cassette recorder. Empty. She ran to the closet. The valise gone. Everything she'd found, everything she'd written, erased. She ran downstairs. Her parents smiled too wide. Morning, sweetie, her mom said. Excited for your field trip today. What field trip? Her dad looked up from the newspaper. To the Whitmore Woods, remember? She stopped breathing. The what? Her dad smiled. Don't worry, you'll love it. They just reopened the trail after all those years. Clara's hands began to tremble. Whitmore Woods, that wasn't the name before. It was Gray Pine. Something had changed. No, everything had. At school, no one remembered Louisa Pine. Or Michael Greer. But there was a new poster on the bulletin board. A black and white flyer. Missing Rachel Ward, age 12. Last seen October 5th, 1991. If you have any information, contact Kinley Creek Patrol. Clara stared. That name, Rachel Ward, wasn't from her loop. It was from Michael's. She flipped open a notebook in her backpack. It wasn't hers. The pages were filled with someone else's thoughts. But halfway through, a line appeared slowly, as if being typed from nowhere. "Clara, you're not out." She dropped it, ran to the bathroom, looked in the mirror. Her reflection stared back. But the eyes were older. Not just hers. A blend. Louisa. Michael. Others. Clara backed away. And then behind her in the mirror, only she saw it. A valise. She spun around. Nothing there. But when she turned back, the mirror cracked, and across the glass a word appeared scratched in reverse. Rewrite. October 28th, 2:19 p.m. Clara skipped the field trip. She wandered back toward the woods. Every path looked familiar, but none were the same. Like the forest was pretending. Mimicking the original but badly. At the center clearing there was no arch. No Louisa. No Michael. Just a single stone marker. Property of narrator, 3-0, active draft. She opened her backpack. Inside a brand new notebook. This one was blank except for the title. The Girl Who Thought She Escaped. Below it, one sentence already written. She chose to believe it was over, but the forest never agreed. Clara screamed into the trees. "I remember," her voice echoed. Then the wind whispered back, "That's the problem." October 29th, 1991, 11:42 a.m. Clara sat alone in the school library. She wasn't supposed to be there, her class was at lunch, but she needed a place where the story wouldn't hear her thinking. Or so she hoped. She opened the new notebook again. Blank. No pen worked on it. Not pencil, not ink. Except an old fountain pen she didn't remember packing. It was cold, heavy. When she gripped it, the page bled slightly like skin. Still she wrote, "If you are reading this, you're not inside the story. That means you can remember freely. I'm trying to get out." She paused, then added, "Please. My name is Clara Whitmore. I was born April 5th, 1982. My father's name is Alan. My mother's name is Helen. My favorite color is moss green. If anyone outside still knows me, write me back." She shut the notebook and waited. Nothing happened. Not for hours. But that night at 2:17 a.m., her window fogged. From the inside, and scrawled into the condensation, "Clara doesn't exist." She screamed. Her parents rushed in, but when she told them what happened, they said, "Clara, who?" October 30th, 1991, 9:01 a.m. Her desk at school was empty. No one called her name. No one saw her. Even the teacher skipped over her name on the attendance sheet. She checked the mirror. She was still there, but thinner, softer, like the lines of her existence were being sketched over and erased. She ran to the library again, opened the notebook. The page she'd written had changed. Now it read, "Clara was a draft. She asked too many questions. She is being revised." She flipped to the next page. There in someone else's handwriting, "Don't let it end this way. Open the last valise." She didn't know which valise that meant. Until she remembered the mirror valise, the one that had shown her future self. She hadn't seen it since the rewrite, but she knew where to find it. Under the stage in the old gym, October 30th, 3:37 p.m. Clara broke into the gym after school. The stage was dark, abandoned. She crawled under knees, scraping wood and dust. And there it was. A suitcase, charcoal black, sealed with thick leather straps. No name. Just a brass plate that read, "Do not open, final draft." She undid the buckles. Inside no mirror this time. Instead, a cassette labeled Narrator Version 0.0, a yellowed envelope marked for the real reader, and a single slip of paper. She wrote herself into you. Clara sat there stunned, and the forest whispered through the vents. If you remember her, she exists. She opened the envelope. Inside a photograph. It was her. Not from the forest. Not from school. But sitting at a desk, typing. Older. Maybe 17. Behind her, a wall covered in maps, notes, storylines. The caption, "Clara Whitmore, original author, draft 1, rejected." She dropped it. She had been the author. Before the forest took her. Before the story rewrote her. Now she was nothing but a line of text slowly disappearing from the margins. October 30th, 1991, 4:12 p.m. Clara sat alone beneath the old gym stage knees pressed to her chest, the narrator's 0.0 cassette in her hand. She didn't know what it would say, but somehow she did. She slid it into the tape player, pressed play, and the static began. Then, "If you're hearing this, you wrote it." She froze. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. "This is Clara Whitmore. Or maybe not anymore. If you've reached this cassette, it means you're waking up again." The voice trembled slightly. "I left this for myself, because I knew one day I'd forget. That's how the forest works. It doesn't keep you here. It makes you choose to stay, over and over, as character, as narrator, as victim, as God." Clara's hand shook. She kept listening. "I created the story because I wanted it to end right. But it never ended. Every draft I rewrote me. So I buried myself in it literally. I became the suitcase, the whisper, the author, and the reader." Tears fell down Clara's cheeks. "This is my final draft, the one I won't edit, because this time I'm not going to change it. I'm going to close it." And then the voice said, "To the reader out there, yes you. If you remember Clara Whitmore, finish the story for her, because she no longer can." Clara's reflection appeared in the dark plastic of the cassette player. But this time, the girl looking back wasn't crying. She was smiling. Not in joy, in release, because she remembered everything. How she wrote the story at age 17. How it became too big, too recursive, too powerful. How it started writing her back. And how eventually, to keep it alive, she had to go in herself. That night, Clara took every valise she'd found. Michael's, Louisa's, her own, the one from the mirror, and the narrator 0.0 suitcase. She returned to the forest, to the clearing where no arch remained, just a wide field of pages, some new, some ancient. She placed the valises in a circle, opened each one, and in the center, she placed the notebook that refused to accept her writing. Then for the first time, it let her. She wrote, "The end." And as she did, the pages around her began to burn. Not with fire, with completion. The loops stopped. The whispers quieted. The sky turned the color of memory. And the forest breathed one last time, then stilled. October 30th, 1991, 6 a.m. A hiker found a spot in the woods that wasn't there the day before. An empty circle. In the center, a notebook, a pen, and a cassette labeled, "If you read, you remember. If you listen, you continue." The hiker didn't touch it. But somewhere deep in the trees, a voice whispered, "It only takes one more reader. Clara Whitmore no longer exists, unless you remember her." That's the power of a story like this. It lives only when someone reads it. If you made it through all 15 parts, thank you for keeping the story alive. Drop a comment. What would you have done if the valise whispered your name? Like, subscribe, and share with someone who still believes in memory. Because even when stories end, some characters whisper back.